Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video number 386, the Nazca Lines Explained. I'm going to deviate from the ancient alien hypothesis here with regards to how enormous megalithic structures can be created by people who aren't capable of really seeing what they're creating. It's actually extremely simple. Now I've touched on this before, but I think it was in a live stream. And I never made a singular video about it, but I've thought about the topic over and over, and I was doing some more research into the Nazca Lines, and I think I found another piece of evidence that fits. Now, point number one, the actual carving of the relatively soft rock and gravelly sediment in southern Peru by the Nazca people is easily accomplished. You can do it today. The Nazca Lines are constantly being fucked around with by dumb tourists who go there and start digging little tunnels and stuff around in the soil. Creating them in that particular climate and having them remain is easy because there's not a whole lot of rain and there's not a whole lot of erosion that's going to happen to your drawing. So you don't actually have to carve them knee-deep in granite to last 10,000 years. It's not necessary. You just have to make sure to fence them off so ATVers don't destroy them. Sometimes they do so unwittingly, it seems, by the way. Oh shit, I didn't know I was driving over a precious petroglyphic artifact. Sorry about that. Oh, 10 years in a Peruvian prison. Well, that's going to be an interesting time. I'm sure that I'll survive it. Here's how they did it. I was looking at the general size of the Nazca Lines, and something dawned on me. These lines, despite depicting various different things, there are hundreds of them, are all within a ballpark range of size. That is that their size, well, they do differ. Overall, if you were to have one particular template you were using to design the Nazca Lines, by whatever method, and I'll get into what that method is, don't worry, I'll tell you, they would all fit within that rough area. There wouldn't be an enormous deviation in size. You wouldn't see a 50-foot long Nazca line and a 2,000-foot long Nazca line. They would all be within a ballpark range. And that's indeed exactly what we see. And therefore, I have a solution to how they created them without the benefit of hot air balloons or teleportation or psychic powers or aliens taking them up in the flying saucer. It's called a piece of wood, a bunch of pins, and some string. That's literally all they did. Here's how you do it. You draw a figure, because these are clearly man-made. I mean, they're made in that exact style that you would also find on potsherds and everything else. So we know that the humans created them. It was not aliens. I don't think that the aliens would have been quite so stylized. I'll get into the Nazca runways as well briefly. What you do, you take a piece of wood or a flat surface, stone, whatever it happens to be, and you put little metal pins in it, or wooden pins in their case. I don't know if they even had copper working actually in their culture. And roughly square. And then you put strings on them. Or you just mark off those flat lines. You use a flat object. You can just draw a grid as well. And then you draw your figure. Now, what can you do with a grid? You can size it up or down. And you can maintain the proportions of that figure. It's very, very simplistic. You can do this in mechanical drawing very easily. It's like the blueprints of a house. The drawing of the house is to a much smaller scale. But you can replicate that house's design using that actual blueprint. You see all the size measurements, etc., etc. Then you simply blow it up, so 1 inch becomes 1 foot or something like that, and that's what they did with the Nazca Lines. Even on uneven surfaces, it doesn't matter. All you have to do is have enough wooden poles and enough string, and you can string a grid on any surface that will conform to that surface. Very simple now, isn't it? All they did was, in this particular grid, you have a piece of a foot of this petroglyphic man that you're trying to make. So you draw it. It's not necessary that you be able to see what you're doing. You see the end result anyway. And in some cases, they were capable of monitoring what was being done because there was a higher prominence or it was on the side of a hill. And so they would have been able to see the progress. And if they needed to fix anything, they could do that as well. Though it doesn't seem that much evidence of that. Another reason to believe that it was pre-planned with a grid. They simply mapped it out with posts, and then they went to town, and they just shuffled through the soil with their shovels, or their feet possibly, and dug it out, and they made their designs, some of which they were never physically capable of seeing at all. Ancient alien enthusiasts say, well, clearly they had a form of flight. They had to have had hot air balloons, or hang gliders at least, or something like that, or they were in the alien space shuttle. Or aliens did it, because clearly they could fly, you know, to 2,500 years ago. They were still flying around in the sky regularly, and they drew these themselves. The UFO came down with a big shovel, and it just trenched it out. And even though the people they were trying to communicate with sometimes couldn't see what they were actually designing for these stupid humans to try to give them enlightenment or whatever, they did it anyway. That's not necessary as an explanation. Just a grid. That's literally all they needed. So at some point, some Nazca warrior was drawing in the sand, and then he drew a bigger version of it, and he said, well, I think I've discovered an interesting mathematical phenomenon. And the rest was history. What they realized is that they could take their art that they were making on a small scale, and they enjoyed it, and they could make it much, much bigger. It could have been they were trying to communicate with whoever was up there. They're seeing comets and twinkling stars and weird shit in the skies, especially before modern lighting, when they saw the entire galaxy stretched out before them like a goddamn scroll. That biblical reference is for a reason. They saw the entire Milky Way out before them, and they said, there's all sorts of stuff whizzing around up there. Well, it must be alive. We're not seeing anything like that down here. It's the gods or something. Let's draw for them. Maybe they'll come down and talk to us. Maybe they just want us to do this. Or it could have been, hey, the chieftain likes this idea of art. He's a patron of the arts. It won't take that long to scratch it into the surface of that hill over there and make it 300 feet wide. The tribe can pull it off in a weekend. Take a couple days off, everyone. We're building art today for the gods. We're building art so that I can feel better about myself as Grand Hakuna or something like that. Either of these explanations work, but the methodology is quite simple. You can do it for yourself. Draw a figure, make a grid over it, go out into your backyard, put some posts and strings in, and see if you can't replicate it. And you'll replicate it perfectly, even on a surface in which you can't directly see the full thing. Because of the way in which the surface is shaped, it doesn't matter. To you, on the ground, it looks like a bunch of lines, but I bet that it'll come out pretty accurate, and of course, you can fix it afterwards. So, no UFOs need apply here. It was very simple mathematics. Give human beings credit for the Nazca Lines, because they were quite clearly responsible. Again, look at the size differential and ask yourself if that doesn't indicate the fact that they were operating with some sort of human-made template to begin with. There's only one real explanation as to what form that template took. That's about all. Peace out.